All righty, folks. Here we are with a live. So bear with us as we try and figure out how to see your comments pop up on screen if you're out there commenting. But we are here with our good buddy Andrew as usual. And he's brought along a friend, Jeff. And if you notice their little tags underneath the name, they are both in Cave Spring Canopies. And they are currently doing a pretty awesome business venture, and it's pretty awesome to hear all the stuff that you guys are doing. So, Jeff, I'll let you go and tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, yeah. So I met Andrew was it May last year?
Yeah.
It was kind of like a one off of the Georgia Mushroom Festival. Claudia had put it together, and it was just a way for local people to meet up because Mushroom Festival was only once a year.
Yeah.
I had just moved to the area, and so I didn't know anyone really. Matt was real, or Andrew was one of the first people I met here, and we just
Yeah,
hit it off
good guy.
immediately. You know, like just instantly. Hey man, check this out! Check this out! Look at what I got going on, and from there we were texting every day. Just hey, I got questions about this, or I think that if I did this, it would go really well. And I was still new to the whole mushroom mycology scene. I'm still very new to the mushroom mycology scene, but he's been there guiding me through every step. I mean, he's got a scientific mind, just really focused on the fine details. And it's been a really good friendship from the beginning. I've really enjoyed it. I can't speak for him.
No, it's been the same for me as well, because part of the problem I've always had is I do have the scientific mind. I can do it, but I do need somebody there next to me that knows more about the business side of things, and also kind of somebody that Jeff's really good at lifting me up. Like if I feel rough about what's going on, he's like, "No, dude, we're good." He can smooth things over very, very well. And so together we become a machine that runs well together.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to describe it, as a machine that runs well together, because we take turns doing heavy lifting. And we've got another guy named James. He does a lot of e-commerce stuff, and he's a really experienced dude. It was kind of crazy just the way how quickly we built a team of people who had different expertise, but it fills almost every hole that you would need to for an organization. And like Andrew will come over and we'll just get going with boiling grain and like getting stuff hydrated. And we're just talking. He's telling me about genetics the entire time. Half of it's going over my head because I mean, I struggled through the 3 classes I had in science in college. You know, I don't think there was anything above a C in any of those classes.
Yeah, we've talked about it a bit. You know, there's a constantly evolving science. Like, you
Yes.
know, I felt like I knew how to converse walking into starting a podcast, and we've kind of had these conversations, Andrew and I. You know that things have changed. You know, and it's not the folks on the ground making stuff up. It's the guys that are doing the real science that are saying, no, okay, this is how we're going to categorize things. You know, and it's honestly, it's hard for me because I'm so set in that era where everybody was correcting everybody to the standard, you know.
Yep.
And now the standard is scientific, and so it's kind of hard to say no to that.
Well, one thing I like about that though is there's no personal bias in it. What the science says isn't like it isn't defined by what you want out of it. You could be completely wrong about something and still find out what you want to find out, and that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, it's a good tool to have in your arsenal for sure. I wish I had more education in all of that science myself, but you know, like a lot of us, I'm self-educated, and you know, I feel like it's a more of a win for me personally, just because of that in some aspects. But other aspects, I'd much rather have not fought to reach that point. You know, had more actual education and learned a few of those processes without the errors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Go ahead.
didn't mean to step on you, buddy. Go on ahead.
I was going to say they already changed the name of Blewett like within the past 2 days.
Oh, really? Like the actual name of it or the classification and everything?
It's no longer La Pesta nuda or Clitocybe nuda. It is now, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I can't remember it offhand, but they just changed the genus. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
They
I
changed that
know
pretty
science
recently,
is a
too.
serious subject, but like that name.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
I was
Yeah.
waiting
Yeah.
for the response. But
Every
yeah,
time I see it on the Facebook growing groups, I just go, "That's funny."
Well, we need like an update board, like here's the terms that have been updated in the last 3 to 6 months, because otherwise you get these folks, that were so adamant like me to sticking to the names we learned, like Blewett or things like that are truly, they break down to nicknames and could
yeah,
represent a number of things in a lot of cases.
yeah.
So let me ask you a question, because you two, I think, will know the answer to this. Andrew, when you said that they had just changed the name, who is they? Is there an official organization? Is it a? I mean, like when
You go ahead.
is it just a subject matter expert that might have like a paper that he's putting out and it goes out for peer review, and most people say, okay, we agree with this classification.
Kind of. It's like the two sources that I use most frequently are the one we've talked about, iNaturalist, and another one that's called MycoBank. And most of the time it happens on iNaturalist first, and somebody will submit, I guess you could call it an addendum. It's like, hey, this is why I think this species should be in this genus rather than the one it's currently in. How many people agree, kind of thing. And it gets kind of reviewed. And based on the response, they either change it or leave it the same. And this particular one, to tell you how subject it is to just personal opinion on a lot of stuff, it's been put back into the same genus twice. So it's like it's moved out, then moved back in, then moved back out.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Okay.
My thoughts too.
I'm going
It's
to
hard
trust you
it's hard to
guys.
follow.
Y'all just tell me what to call it this week, and that's what I'll go by. Okay.
Blewett.
Yeah,
Good
I just know how to,
newsletter.
when I see it, that I can eat
Yeah.
it.
But Brandon actually told me there's something called a brown it as well.
Really? Does it look
Yeah.
the same? Like, is it a kind of a
They're gross
counter
looking.
clone?
They're gross looking.
Oh, okay. Well, I
But
mean, it does brown was not
yeah.
always the most appetizing.
But yeah, Jeff, tell us about why you wanted to get started with mushrooms a little bit, because I'm super curious what lit the fire in you.
Well, there's two answers. There's the one that got me interested in gourmets, and then there's the one that got me interested in mycology. Gourmets, I have a wife and a daughter. Love them to death. My daughter just came second place in regionals for wrestling today. Against
Nice.
boys too.
Congrats.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
kicked their butts. I loved it. Anyways, go Tigers. I love cooking for them. That's like my thing. I come home from work and I love cooking for my family. And I would look up recipes and they would call for oysters or shiitakes. And I'm in the South. We have button mushrooms in the grocery
Right.
store, and usually they're brown and about 3 weeks old. And that's where the passion for gourmets came from. Is just a love for good food, and you can't get much better than a good old mushroom. And then there's another interest in mycology, and it really stems from some of the research that the VA has put out recently about that beneficial health results that veterans with PTSD or depression see when receiving therapy that involves psilocybin mushrooms. And
Yeah.
this research is conducted at Johns Hopkins. I mean, just this week, the VA released a press release that said 86% of veterans with PTSD or depression saw those positive benefits. And I mean, that's coming from our government, right?
That's
Right.
Yeah, that's 86%. That
That's
is
huge.
insane. The most effective method they have right now, I believe, and I'll check the sources on this later, and if I'm correct, someone please correct me. But it's something called long-term exposure treatment therapy. It was a method I used myself for a little bit, and those numbers are like in the 30%, right?
Wow.
So we're talking about giving another tool to people who are truly suffering, and not just veterans. People all over the world suffer
Right.
from things, and it is just putting another tool in their arsenal to have a happier, better life. And I've personally lost friends, and I know we all have, and it's just like, hey, this is common sense. If we can do this in a healthy environment with doctors helping their patients, this is something we should explore. And I always thought that was a great thing. Um, you
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah, it's
and
good
like
to
I
see
said,
it global right now. I think
yes,
there's a lot of
absolutely.
people that are new to it that are very intelligent and very capable. I think we'll see some innovations. I think we'll have some challenges certainly as a result of it as well. But that's how it works in any field that grows or any science
Yep,
that grows.
yeah.
There's more people putting into it. So
It can be frustrating because I, I'm sure all three of us, we believe that it can be truly beneficial, but we know that there's years and years of ahead of getting the legislation to where it needs to be, to where this can meaningfully help people in a legal way. But I
right.
mean, that's the
And
route it's going
affordable
down.
too. That's a big
Yes,
thing is affordable because if
affordable.
you've got to pay $4,000 for an eighth,
Okay. Can I?
that's pretty
I
expensive.
I don't want to kind of like take up too much time here, but
You're good, man.
about a year
Yeah,
and a
we got
half
all
ago.
kinds of time.
Great. About a year and a half ago, I went to my primary care provider. He's a great guy. Uh, I hope he's my doctor till I die. Um, and I had gone to him with some of my issues. I explained to him my therapy at the VA and things like that. And he told me about a drug called Kelbury. It was outstanding. It was a very good tool, just like a lot of other SSRIs and stuff like that. $1,300 for a 30-day supply. And
Wow.
because it was so new, no insurance was paying for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so you say affordable, you're you take
It's
the drugs that are
relative,
most,
certainly.
yeah, you take the drugs that are most affordable, are the most effective on people. Sometimes they're already astronomical prices, and you've got guys like Mark Cuban who are working on that, who believe on finding uh, expired patents on medicines that helped people, and producing those drugs at a low cost so that they are affordable. And those are great initiatives. But I mean, psilocybin is just about as affordable as you can get.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the challenge will be that it's so prevalent on the street
Yeah.
level, if you will.
Yep.
That it will be hard to ever, I don't know, to polarize it to where the two are so separate that one can be
Yeah.
eliminated. I think we'll
I
always
do
have
agree with that. I think that's one of the biggest challenges is it's hard to educate the public on that chemical as being purely medicinal as opposed to being recreational, which is how it's mostly viewed today. Is that the kind of point you were making? I don't know if yeah.
Yeah, I think basically you're always going to have people that are going to use it recreationally, certainly. But I think
Yep.
more than that, you'll just have people that will want to do it on their own. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of the healing
Yeah.
aspect is in learning to do it. A lot of people, it's like gardening, with the benefit of medicine at the end of gardening. So it's multiple treatments in one. And so I think, like I say, there will always be multiple markets, if you will, through the gray, from the natural to the official to the hidden.
Yeah.
Yes. Just to clarify, Cave Spring Canopies is a purely gourmet
Yes,
operation. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, we did
with
get
like
off on psilocybin
yeah.
somehow, but we'll go
um,
back on the course.
oh no, we don't have to go back on that course. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We are
it's a
experimenting with
it's a
these
prevalent
wild
subject
oysters
right
that
now.
we found. Like, yeah, I just wanted to divide that line real quick. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so why don't we get on to what some of the projects that you are doing, because
Okay.
I know that I've seen some really cool pictures from Andrew recently, and, I thought I had known what I was looking at, but man, they sure turned out to be some pretty samples.
Why don't you go ahead and take that one, buddy?
Well, some of the ones we've been working on, we're trying to have stuff that's like familiar but a little bit different. So like rather than just having plain oysters, we have like the tarragon oysters, the elm oysters, something a little bit that not everybody has. And our biggest project, something I'm trying to get done by the end of the year, is I haven't even talked to Jeff about this yet. Is a mono.
Yeah, I was about to say, what a big project am I about to hear about?
It's not going to be anything that's like crazy or anything. A mono carry to mono carry on cross of the late oyster with the classic oyster P. austerus, and so it's they're closely related, but far enough away that we could potentially get something really interesting.
Nice.
And I'm excited to see what'll come out of that.
So for somebody like me, how do you go about that? Because my level of genetic crossing is limited to some of the less approved methods, we'll say.
Okay. Well, essentially, when you look at spores, I'm gonna get a little scientific here. When you look at spores, and when they're germinated, they can either be germinated in a haploid state or not. And if they're in a haploid state, they really want to pair off with something. It's kind of like sperm and an egg not having a complete set of DNA without one another. You want two spores to create a colony, and that's how a genetic comes together. So typically, when you're doing that, you find a way to isolate as few spores as you can. You put them to a petri dish and you watch them very closely on a microscope. Once those germinate, you have to look very closely for what's called clamp connections. This is how colonies actually form in fungus. So when two previously haploid mycelial samples connect together with clamp connections to one another, they will actually, most of the time, kind of sector out a bit. And when they sector out a bit, you may have a new cross there. But at the same time, it's never going to be a guarantee right off the bat because there's different mating types for the monokaryon. So it's really. Go ahead.
Sorry. Are you when it's sectoring out and you say you might have a new cross there, are you looking for sectors that you haven't been able to identify before, where you just go, oh, that's something I've never seen before?
Well, on the plate, it's going to look similar to everything. Okay. It's just literally where they meet. Like, say this was two mycelial walls connecting. Like where they meet here, usually you'll have like another branch come off of them. Literally, you can see the exact area that's like, hey, this is the diploid. I don't know why I couldn't find that word for a minute, but yeah, it'll sector off. I'll find some photos and send you some later, but usually you can be like, hey, there it is.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds interesting. So you essentially use serial dilution to get it down to bare spores to where they're spread out on a plate far enough apart that when they germinate, you can take them and pair them off with a new one.
Yeah, without go ahead.
What's this process like getting those two spores together? He said serial germination, spreading them out. You two have to get two of those spores together. Are you forcing that somehow, or are you just sitting and waiting?
You're basically waiting. The idea is to germinate a single spore and have mycelium grow from it, because that is possible. So you have mycelium grow from a single spore, and then you have that mycelium and whatever you want to pair it with mycelium. Hold on, let me get centered here. And I forgot where I was going. Oops.
Well, with the two spots of paired spores that have germinated essentially on the plate. Yeah. So we're assuming you have your serial dilution, you have your initial individual spores or very few spores on your plate, and so do you have them on an individual plate? Like, do you have one on one plate and one on another, and then
Are
you
you
put them
serial
together on
diluting
the
them
plate?
together? Oh,
Initially, they are on separate plates until you
okay.
can confirm that they have no clamp connections whatsoever. Once you're sure, like,
Okay,
I'm
I
positive
got you. That's
this is
where that
on
comes in. So you first
yeah.
you put them on your plate after they've been diluted in distilled water. Do you have a process for that? Do you just kind of do like I used to do? I'd just get like 3 or 4 glasses of water in a row, and
You can go one of two ways, and you can do serial dilution through using. I actually use spore syringes, or there's some other techniques that a couple of people I won't come up with.
yeah. So then once you get to and identify them, what's the success rate? Do you pair them up and they always have a chance of connecting, or is it like
No,
very rarely they have a chance?
it's about a 25% chance. Because
Okay.
it's there's 4 possible mating types if I remember correctly. And again, if I'm wrong about that, someone please feel free to comment. That's something that I'm still learning about. But there's 4 different mating types, and if they do not want to work together, they're just like nope, and they will not form connections.
Like
Kind of
pandas.
like
Very
round won't fit in the square hole, or square won't fit in the round hole.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, I just so when you do this, are there benefits to be gained of like the biodiversity of the genetic? That's not even the right word. Okay, look, for disclosure, I'm an accountant. I'm not a scientist. Okay, I don't know.
No worries.
No, I kind of where you
right. So when you're taking these different genetics and you get that process to work, and I know I'm going a little bit off rails from the scientific technical questions Matt's asking, but you're taking, say, like what you and I are doing with wild genetics, right? So ones that you found outside on your forays, you're reintroducing these primitive wild genetics. Does that make these genetics more biodiverse, like to the point where they can overcome more sorts of contamination, or they might be more resilient? And I know you won't identify those traits or features until you do a couple of grows of them and really feel like what's going on. But I mean, have you found this to be a pretty beneficial process to keeping those genetics healthy and viable so that going forward, you're always producing really good mushrooms?
Yes, absolutely. Because even if you're not improving on like yields, you can improve on colonization times. You can improve on like there's so many different ways that you can improve on them.
Yeah.
And bringing in that is one thing that's been talked about heavily within the mycology community recently. That as far as a lot of the diversity goes, most people are working with a very small pool of genetics. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people have the exact same LC.
I know before I met you, that was the case with me. I was like, oh, great. I have Blue Oyster LC. I can grow as much Blue Oyster as I want. And then I found out, hey, you can keep this going for a little bit, but things are going to start to break down a little bit.
Yeah. And they won't undergo senescence as long as you keep like, okay, I'm going to take this culture, grow it out, take a new clone from that yield. And then like you can keep doing that. But if you just take a single plate and keep doing transfers from that one culture over and over.
So guilty of
that. Yeah. I need to take a new lion's mane sample. I have not fruited that
Yes.
local one for a while. That's why I only give it away. Until I get a fresh sample or fruit it out myself, it's just fun to look at.
And that's why I'm so thankful for Andrew. Is he goes out there almost every weekend and he's finding new things. He's finding fresh, wild things, and he's like, "Hey, check this out. I'm about to reintroduce this with this one line we have going." And he's like I said, he's the genetics guy. He makes sure everything is healthy and viable and just flourishing. and it's something I couldn't do. When you talk about cultivating, this man cultivates his mushrooms from the very moment their DNA is written until he pulls them off that fruiting block.
I appreciate that, man. I really do. But it's something I love. I enjoy both going out to hunt and I enjoy interacting with people as well because this I don't know if I've ever told you that, but before I got into mycology, and Matt actually does know this, I was kind of a hermit. Like I spoke to maybe 6 people. Um so mycology has also been my way of reconnecting with people as well, you know.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yep.
Mine a lot too, you know. These days I feel like my personality is an outspoken one, but I really am not. I like Andrew, I would rather just curl up under the blankets most days or go play in the woods, you know, if the weather cooperates. It's cold as hell
It,
these
it,
days.
I, you two remind me of a time I told someone I was shy and they didn't believe me, right? And it's because I see you two making the effort to network and to communicate and to reach out to people that have the same interest as you. And yeah, you're shy. You're an introvert, like you just said. You'd rather just curl up, right?
Yeah.
And be by yourself. But you know, it's healthy to have conversations like this with other people in the community.
Yep. Yeah,
So
life
life
is
is
about
exciting.
challenging yourself. If you don't, then you won't really go anywhere.
Oh my God, no, challenging yourself. I've been so scared this week. I have been horrified this week. Just it, it's it's nerve wracking putting yourself out there and like saying, "Hey, I'm producing this thing, and I want you guys to check it out."
Yeah,
And
it makes you accountable, and all of
so
a
afraid of
sudden
sending
you
out
feel
a
that
bad product.
responsibility.
Yes, yes, it's a huge level of responsibility because you don't want someone to give over their hard-earned money and then you send them something and it contaminates, or you send them something and oh, hi Michael Allen and B Hendricks, sorry, I saw comments. You don't want to send someone something and it'd be a waste to them, so you're sitting there trying to make sure everything you're doing is clean and consistent, and you're sending out something that can be relied upon every time. And Matt, I've bought auger from many places. I bought your auger one time and I stopped looking for other places. Never any of your plates had an issue. And this isn't me like shilling for you on the podcast or whatever. Just this is me admiring your product. I told you this before we started streaming. Just everything you send is consistent. It's in good condition and it's ready to be used. And it's a solid product. And I look up to it. And you know that's what everyone should strive for, especially in mycology. You have to have consistency. You know, you
Right.
got to have the process down.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I can't say that I'm highly studied in the processes of scientific study, you know, like as far as taking these things down. What I am is highly obsessive compulsive. And so, you know, when I do these things, I just try and think of as many variables as I can that are relevant, you know, and test things out thoroughly before I ever do them. And I take the same perspective to the business, you know, and I just won't put anything out there that hasn't thoroughly been tested and verified outside of my own area.
And
So
it's Matt's incredibly humble about it, but it's literally like once or twice a week he's like, okay, I need to adjust this. He's like an alchemist, literally making.
Yep.
oh, you know what I did yesterday?
What's
I
that?
had my buddy stop by, the HVAC guy, and you know I bought all these flow hoods at auction, and I've had them sitting, not being able to use. One had a bad motor, so I pulled the motor out, and he put on I don't know what you'd call it, kind of like a box on the back of this thing to plumb in a blower. And so I'm gonna hook it up, and now I'll have three of the 4 foot by 2 foot flow hoods in there, two of the normal ones that you always see, and then the other stainless flow cabinet. So I'm really hoping to get into doing larger numbers, you know, like getting into brick and mortars and letting them do the salesmanship, and I'll just pump the plates out, you know. live in my
I
lab like
videos of you in there pumping those plates out, and it's crazy the stacks of those plates. I feel like they're taller than me sometimes, and not to sound like a creep, I've watched a ton of your videos of you pouring
Well, it
plates.
doesn't sound that way unless you start the conversation with not trying to sound like.
Great stance. You have great posture. I really like it. You should come over and talk to me about it sometime. But I see your wall of flow hoods and you just sitting there pouring, and I'm just like, man, like I I really like your setup. It's
Thank you.
respectable. And
Yeah,
the
it's
entire
my
thing is inside
escape.
one tent, right?
Yeah, it's a 8 foot by 8 foot. I think originally they were growing tents. Everybody in Gourmet uses them for growing
Yeah. Shotgun
their
chambers, they're called sometimes.
Marthas,
Yeah,
or I don't.
Martha tents.
When they're that big, I think they call them big boy names like grow tents
Yeah.
or what do they call them, Andrew?
Tense.
You know, just
Tents.
tents. Yeah, like no, we ain't got to sign it. Nothing. It's just
I
a tent.
I have a really good friend. Look, hey, don't shoot me. I have a really good friend in the DEA. He goes to church with us, and he came over one day and he was like, "Why you got a weed tent in your house, buddy?"
Right,
Like,
right.
that is.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it. That's what they are.
Really
Yeah, I
good.
think it's. I don't remember what brand it is, but I bought off Amazon for like $200 or $300,
Yeah.
and it
I don't
just so
want to.
happens to be perfect to put 2 4-foot flow hoods end to end, get a table in there, and have a nice setup. Where I originally set up was my old house, and I live in Oregon, and it rains and storms all the time. So we have roof leaks. And so pretty much every house has mold issues. And my house was no exception. And I had an open air room that I initially set up a flow hood in, and I still had contamination. So I decided, well, the only way I can really alleviate this is by creating a room within a room. And when I did that, it worked great. I didn't have any kind of like intake or anything, but a little known fact about flow hoods, unless you have one, those suckers heat up. They heat up fast. Like you're working pouring agar for 4 or 5 hours, and you have it in a little room. You're looking at a temperature swing from 10 to 20 degrees, and it just keeps going. So if you're leaving them there to cool off overnight, you need something to cool the room. And so what I ended up backing into was that I needed an air conditioner. Initially, I put it behind the table. And, I read a lot of information about competing air currents and that you didn't want that in a clean room. And so I ended up backing into needing to port in air, and eventually got to blowing in air and creating a positive pressure system. And when I ended up doing that, it turns into this like super duper clean room. I mean, it's essentially a low budget clean room like they do in labs and whatnot. People that tell you, hey, I don't wrap my petri dishes, I work in a lab, I do this and that. Well, yeah, you guys work in a positive air environment, and all of the air coming in is HEPA filtered. Of course you can do that. We do not. That's what my room essentially creates. And so as long as I have that positive airflow coming in, even if it's just a tiny, tiny bit of positive pressure, uh, I'm sterile in there. You can leave plates open or unwrapped in there for long periods of time and have no issue. But once you turn it off and let the house air soak in, it's no bueno.
So I'm sorry. I'm just thinking. I have a flow hood. I just bought one from a company here near where I live. It's based out of Atlanta. He buys old ones from labs, cleans them up, repurposes. He does a great job. And you said they heat up a lot. I've been leaving mine on for like 2 or 3 days at a time because I read from a couple of my friends it will help clean the room as well, and it's completely fine because these are lab grade and they're meant to run forever. Have I been doing something horrible?
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, there are many different types of flow hood. We use that as a general term.
Yep.
So, for instance, many flow cabinets are medical grade flow cabinets that are designed to run 24 hours a day, where they are designed to have active samples sitting in them, uh, doing experiments or just awaiting things to be looked at. But some of them, like a standard 2x4 FFU, like what I use, which is actually a filter fan unit, a lot of them
That's
are
what I'm
not
using as well.
meant
Go on.
to.
Yep.
That's what you have?
Yep.
Yeah, those are not always meant to be laid on their side. And so the motor in the housing rubs against it and creates, a little bit of heat from friction over time.
Okay.
So you would notice. I mean, it may well be that you got a good one. Depends on who you get them from, because there are laminar flow hoods that are meant to be laid on their side, and the motor is reinforced and meant to be spun that way, and they don't heat up. But we go for the cheaper ones, and the cheaper ones are typically the ceiling units, and then you just turn them on their side and repurpose them.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure the supplier he got it from, Matt.
Oh, Jake.
Nothing but air.
Yep. Yeah, Jake over at Nothing But Air. Great guy. He's been around at least as long as I've been around, 5 years
Well,
here.
I'm glad
So.
I bought from someone. Hey, he gave me a great price. He was really nice. I just drove down to his location because he's only about an hour and a half from where I live.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, really friendly guy. And then he was at the Georgia Mushroom Festival as well last year. He had a little booth set up, and I hope that drove a lot of business his way because his product's been great. Ever since I started using it, I've had low contamination rates, lower than I ever had using my homemade still air box, which was not very good.
Oh, yeah. I was just reading comments here too now. I'm like a squirrel, or I'm like one of those squirrel guys. Look, oh, there's a squirrel over there. I was
Michael
reading what
Allen
Alan
says,
said here.
yeah. What is a peristaltic? Staltic?
I'm glad you tried it, because I would struggle just as hard. So a lot of people use a little pump that's used for like things like transfusion
Yep.
or pumping medication into patients and whatnot to pump their agar. And I've seen some pretty decent setups, but I just I can't see setting it up in my particular tent right now. I would like to get set up for it eventually, and I would like to have a really nice pump. There are, there's small ones that are a lot of people are using right now that can go in the PC, and there's some really nice big ones too. And I would kind of like to get set up to where I can get like a large 20-liter vessel that I can cook all my agar in and have a pump coming off of that, instead of trying to pair it up with like 1 liters like I'm using now, and constantly switching the pump over and having another tool that an old guy like me doesn't like having change around. So but no, I think you're spot on there. Like a lot of people use it particularly because of the pain you can get from pouring. I mean, you got to figure there's a liter in each of those bottles, so it's probably around 3 pounds maybe, at least, and you're constantly tipping and holding, and yeah, there's all kinds of stuffs away around that.
Austin was.
Talking
I
there.
had asked out loud what exactly one was, and so
Yep.
Austin just answered it
Oh,
for
okay.
me.
I
And
like that
think
explanation.
There's a mushroom cultivator, Florida fungi, Ivan. I think that's what he uses. He's shown me a few pictures of his setup, and I think that's what he uses, one of
He's
those
cool.
pumps.
Nice. Yeah, and that's another thing that's hard to find information on. You will see people that will show they're using them, and that they work, but I've not really found any how-tos or
Yeah,
hey,
like
here's tips and tricks on how not
I'm
to
not
screw
trying.
up
I'm not trained
thousand
in lab
plates.
work. You know, my wife is. She's a nurse practitioner and she's outstanding in the lab, and she's taught me a lot of sterile technique. But I see these pictures and I go, I don't know what that is. What are you using, and why are you using it? You know?
Right. Yeah, well, and that is a lot of things that are helping us now. Is that people are from the community, the science community, are coming in saying, "Hey, here's all these cool lab tools we use, all these medical tools that we use.
Yeah.
We can cross over, and you can use them in mycology." And there's quite a bit of stuff that really, if you have a creative mind, you can repurpose and do some pretty
You
awesome
want to talk about
things.
the J loops, Andrew? I see your face.
That's man. I knew you wanted to talk about it. Go ahead.
No, okay. So like I said, my wife's a nurse practitioner, and so Andrew and I just had it a while ago that if you're producing bags that are supposed to fruit mushrooms, you need a lot of liquid culture. At the end of the day, you need a lot of freaking liquid culture. It's almost like the lifeblood of your business. So we were trying to find a way to create a lot of liquid culture in these mason jars and then draw them out cleanly. And I know people use clamps on just tubing and stuff like that, but I was describing the problem to my wife and she's like, "Oh, you just want a J loop." And I was like, "What is a J loop?" And have you ever heard of a J loop?
I had not. No,
Okay.
only from
So
Andrew recently.
it's medical tubing, and on the bottom is a filter, and at the top it has a Laurel lock that you would attach to a syringe to. But in between the tubing and the lower lock is a pressure mechanism to where when you screw in your syringe, it applies pressure to the mechanism and then it allows flow. The moment you unscrew the syringe and remove it, the pressure creates an airtight seal and no air gets back into that medical tubing, period.
Nice.
It's just how
So
it
it
is.
allows for a seamless, clean
Yep.
connection, basically.
We used the high temperature silicone sealant to put that on one end of the lid, and then just a syringe filter also on the lid so that when we were extracting LC, it would allow airflow into it because it creates that vacuum, but it would also be clean. And we've had a few issues with clogging. We're still working out the process, but I've been able to produce a lot of LC and pull it out. And it's a medical tool, like you said. It's something that
Yeah.
science they've been using in hospitals for years. And my wife was
Yeah.
like, "Just use this. We already invented that thing for you. You don't even have to do the work."
Yep. Yeah, and that's again where an influx of creative individuals that are learning, where they can be really beneficial because you let them be creative and try some of those new things and suggest those things, and you're like, what? Wait, that will work.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was like really impressed with it as well because most of the ones that most people are using now, if you forget that clip at all, you get backwash into your LC.
Yep.
And like, oh, I pulled 2 syringes worth of LC and forgot the clip. I just ruined an entire batch.
That's 2 syringes worth of dirty air that's been sucked right back into your jar, man.
Interesting.
Yes.
So the typical LC lid has just got like a standard lure cap, like you'd get
Well,
on the end of your syringe, or how do those
there's a
ones
whole
work?
bunch of different variations. What it is typically the LC jar lid will have this clip device that once you're done drawing, you apply the clip to the tubing and it will prevent backflow, right?
Okay.
And these just automatically take care of the problem. But it's just one of those things where you go, hey, this is a problem that we need solving. And it turns out that problem was solved 15 years ago by somebody else. Yeah,
Oh
that's one
yeah.
of those clips that would go onto the. And do you have any of the lids with you right now? Yeah,
They're being washed right now.
whatever. It's okay. Next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see the innovations for sure. I know I've seen recently water bottle LC again, and that was something that our buddy Madden had tried a while back, and that's pretty cool. I don't know if you ever seen that, but you can just basically inject LC right into a water bottle. Apparently, it's sterile, and it
The
will
very first
populate
time
it.
I've seen it done was with the Capri Sun.
Oh
Someone,
yeah,
yeah, the Capri Sun tech, man. That's an old one I saw.
I don't know.
That's
That's some
always,
pretty potent LC right there, man. Like I
that's
think
a
you could
lot of
probably
sugar.
take that and make like 10 or 15 quarts of LC out of that.
What I'm using for my LC mixture right now, I know Andrew's using a different one personally. Is my mother is a big bee lover, and she has a farm out in Alabama, and she's got beehives out the wazoo.
Oh yeah.
And every year she just brings us fresh honey, just liter jars. Like I think I have like 7 that are like this big in my closet. And I'll tell you what, honey has been great for my LC.
Oh
I
yeah.
know your proprietary blend, Matt, is awesome. And I've even ordered some of it myself and used it, and I found it to be great. But when I don't have any of that, and I don't feel like mixing malt extract and all this other stuff, I go, all right, we're just gonna throw 2 tablespoons of honey in there, and it will be all right.
Yeah, one of my favorite actually is honey and coconut water. So you use
Okay.
about a quarter cup of coconut water, and this was somebody else's. I just poached it off YouTube, and I think I used maybe around a teaspoon of honey in there, and then
Okay.
topped it off with distilled or spring water. And basically, the coconut water just adds in minerals and vitamins that otherwise wouldn't be there, and
Okay.
gives it a little bit of a zest without the.
That's something I've never considered. I've never even thought about it, supplementing it further. But I mean, that remind me about this later, Andrew, and we'll talk about this and maybe adjust our recipe a little
I've
bit.
actually heard of people using the coconut water in their substrate recently too. That's
Really,
another thing people are adding
really.
additives to grain and substrate to give it more juice. What do they call it? The sticky grain and sticky
Hey,
sub.
as long as it's clean and it's got water. I mean, if it's bringing extra vitamins and stuff to it, I always, I've always just for my substrate, you know, Master's Mix and our grain and hardwood field pellets or cocoa coir, depending on what you're growing. But I typically always, when I first started, I added as little to my substrate as possible because I always saw that as more vectors for contamination, you know.
Right.
And now that I'm learning more about how to get these things sterile from Andrew, we've got this great All American thing, and it cleans everything. Nothing that comes out of that All American is dirty.
Right.
We could start talking a little bit more about like, hey, vermiculite, coconut water. I've never even messed with vermiculite, to be honest. I've never found the need, but
Yeah, and it I'm trying Peptone with my grain right now, but it's still like I'm doing very small amounts, like half pint jars, comparing them to regular non-variable. But
no, is it peptone naturally present in honey, or am I just imagining that?
I
No,
have
I'm pretty
no idea.
because it'd be vegetable peptone, and technically honey is derived from pollen, so somewhere I'm sure that's metabolized in.
Okay.
Yeah, I know there's various peptones. Like, so particularly I use high veg, which is derived from multiple vegetables, but there are all kinds. A lot of people prefer bacteriological or soya peptone, but I like what I like. Originally I got it because it was cheap, and it wasn't what people recommended, and it smells bad. But hey, man, it works.
Yeah, it does smell kind of.
Look, you just have to learn to deal with the smells. About once a week, my daughter comes to me and says, "Dad, the house smells like grass. Can you please pressure can outside?" I go, "Nah, I'm sorry, baby. This is just how it is."
Yeah, it happens. For me, it was the sound of the pressure canner. Like I ran 2 of them for so many years. Like it just got to the point where I cannot stand hearing that. I just instantly get a headache.
The-
I'm the only one that actually kind of likes it a little bit.
Now, see, I wear headphones like this that noise cancel out, and I'm blasting music.
Andrew
like,
likes the sound of a time bomb about to go off in his kitchen.
Apparently.
Okay.
Well, hey, you know, I remember there was a time I did because it meant that it was going at the right cadence.
Yeah.
Like you listen for the right pattern. And if you hear even a slight variance, you need to go in there, especially running grain in bags. I found that to be pretty important with the stovetop units.
We were talking not too long ago, Jeff, about the time. I don't remember how long ago it was, but you and I were making grain, and you were like, "Hey, does this seem hydrated correctly?" And I literally grabbed some, bounced it in my hands, and was like, "That seems right." You were like,
Yep.
"What, dude? Did you just what? What?"
Yeah. Hydrating grain is, in my opinion, it's probably the hardest part to get right.
Oh, yeah.
You can't boil it too long, but then you have to let it sit out in the proper conditions. Hydrating grain is always. I'm glad you're there when I get done hydrating it because you can tell me whether it's right or wrong.
But the thing
There's a
is,
lot of variables too, and a lot of preferences. Like, what are you doing with it? Are you immediately inoculating it, or are you trying to have it be shelf stable and put it on a store shelf? You know, like there's some guys that can do some wizard stuff, and it looks like it's not even hydrated, but you go and you're like, nope, yep, that's hydrated. Okay, that's weird, but it doesn't fog up the bag. Sits on a shelf, stays sterile.
I do like to check the shelf stability of the grain that we do. If I do a jar and I leave it on my shelf for 6 weeks and it looks the exact same as it came out of the PC day one, I feel like we're doing good work. I feel like
Yeah.
that's what you want, you know?
Yeah, same here. I felt comfortable when I had tested, you know, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 different packages for 6 months of my my Petries. You know, like okay, they sat, nothing happened to them, no zero contams. We're you know okay. I feel comfortable selling to someone else to resell them now.
Yep. And that's one big thing that I've always talked about with Andrew is, you never want to mail something to someone and you want to be sure that when they open that package, there's not going to be some green, droopy, gloopy thing looking at them, right? You want it to look good for them, and you want it to, like I said earlier, be consistent.
Yeah, yeah, that's a key. I mean, it gets mind numbing sometimes doing the same thing exactly the same way every time, but you know, you just got to think of ways to improve it, and
Yep.
we've kind of done that, made it more fun, I guess, is what we've done
Mhm.
with our various videos and shows, and Andrew is going to help me too with making some more videos, some educational videos, and when things thaw out.
if you want to do some recipes and stuff, man, I'm sure Matt, he's at least as good as cook as me, if not better. A lot of his dishes. Well, okay, I'd say that we're close to the same level, but he goes all the way on presentation still, and I'm like kind of disheartened, and I'm just like, it's spaghetti. Fucking
You're
eat
just
it.
ready to eat it. When it's done, you're like, all right,
It tastes good, man. What else do you need?
Well, yeah, but like I said, I hand it to my wife, and if it looks good, she gives me a kiss, and so I'm really motivated to make it look good.
Yep, there
That's
you
fair.
go.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would not say I'm as good as Drew cooking wise. I can cook maybe like 12 things well, and that's about it. Whereas he's educated in the culinary arts, whereas I'm just binging with Babish was my teacher.
Oh,
Well, I
love
look
it.
forward to future Georgia glamping episodes. Maybe I'll get my trailer out there and
You really do need to come down here. So I've been out west, and I love the West. I love Oregon and Washington and Northern California. I think it's the second prettiest part of the country, Georgia being the first prettiest part of the country
Of
for
course,
sure.
we have to love our homes.
We do.
Actually, a lot of my family is from Arkansas, so I love the rolling hills of the South and the forests. I love that
You
Ozark kind of environment.
you mentioned Arkansas, so just really quick, shout out to Rico Mico. Love you, dude.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hopefully he sees this at some point.
He
Good
will.
dude, definitely a good friend.
Oh yeah.
I ordered. Wait, that's who I bought my auger punch from, right?
Yep.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, dude, I love that thing. I love that thing. I just my life has gotten so much better since I bought that auger punch. I'll tell you what, because like I said, I'm not lab trained, so I can't tell you the number of times I've spent like trying to do transfers. Like, how the fuck am I going to do this while remaining clean? I don't have
Right.
5 hands, and that thing just made my life easier. Rico, Myco, just great auger punch, dude. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a really awesome dude too. Originally, when I met him, I think he was just getting into it, but he was making videos, and he had a lot of friends and a lot of followers just because he's a real nice person, and was happy to show his learning mycology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the dude, and he and I have a very unique friendship because we don't talk for maybe it'll be like 8 months or so, and then we'll hit each other up. Oh yeah, I got this going on, this project and that project. Me and him will talk for hours and hours, but he's always, no matter what you're talking about, you could be like, yeah, I just got McDonald's, I got a Sprite, I got a McDouble. You could be telling him anything, and the dude's always like really interested, and he's a good guy. I love him to death.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to have people to hear you. Oftentimes that's what we do not feel, especially around here as a noob. It can be hard to be heard.
Sometimes you're just scared to speak up.
Yeah, but
Especially
it changes every day. We get more and more good people in here and people interested in helping. Just like you
and there's a
guys.
lot of really good communities out there that are just ready to give you as much information as you're willing to digest.
Oh yeah.
I could say when I first started getting into this hobby, it was almost scary how easy it was to just scour the internet and learn everything you wanted to learn, possibly. Like if you had a question, there were 5 people there ready to tell you what you needed to know. So, I
Right.
mean, I can honestly say this is one of the best communities I've ever seen online because there's a lot of really odd ones. But even like the elitist snobs in mycology still want to teach you. They still want you to learn at the end of the day,
Right.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, there's a ton of information out there,
Yep.
and what you see, I think, is there's some really intelligent people that put that information out there, and they don't necessarily want to deal with people, they put the information out there, and then there's other
Everybody
people
at the
that
shroomery. That's everybody at the shroomery. They want to put the information out there.
I
They
don't
don't
know. I don't
care
think they
about
like
your
me too
opinion on
much
the
over there.
information. They don't want any feedback. But that's the best place to learn, in my opinion. That's where I learned. And
Oh, there's great texts. You will
dude, it's
find
like a
in
boot camp of mycology. Yeah.
all of my roots. That's where I got a lot of my
Yep.
information and
Absolutely. And if
my
you could just swallow your
desire to
pride,
experiment.
yep. If you can swallow your pride, there's nowhere else better to learn, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think
Other than
it was
college.
too much for
Other
me
than college,
personally.
obviously.
But
College is like the best place to learn.
yeah, I think it's a good place to learn now.
Yeah.
I think there's some folks that come out with some good
Absolutely.
educations. I think originally years and years ago, I don't know that you could get a mycology degree, and
All right.
and come out in fungal mycology,
Yeah.
right? Or are kind of.
Soapbox. Soapbox.
Soapbox. Oh, okay. All right.
Nowhere
Drum roll.
Soapbox
offers-
is that I have to go finish cooking my wife and my daughter's dinner.
You're good, bro.
There's pasta dough sitting on my countertop just waiting to be cut
No
right now.
worries. we've actually hit our hour, so you can sign
Oh,
out if you like, and
I want to listen to the
Andrew and I
soapbox.
will keep BSing here, and
Yeah.
I'll listen to the soapbox first.
okay.
Oh, it's so difficult to even find a school that actually offers a mycology degree, because if there was one anywhere near me, well, it might have changed since I've been in college. I'm fucking old, but
We're so old.
um when I was in college, I'll say that when I was in college, it was like I would have had to move either across the country or states away. Like there was no good options locally for me to be able to do anything like that. So that's why I didn't go into it. Even now, I think that you can minor in mycology, but you still have to major in biology in a lot of places.
Yep.
And I want to learn so much more.
Right.
Well, it's still a
So
developing
can you
field,
get
isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
most of the research that has been done within the last 30 years.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of it has really probably been input by folks like us on the ground, and a lot of like Rockefeller. That's why he's an icon in our community, because he really was just a guy on the ground doing stuff.
Just what a friendly guy too.
Yeah,
So friendly. So
yeah,
friendly.
very down to earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I got
Hey,
to go
I'm
on
gonna head out,
a
guys.
nice
Thank you
visit.
so much, Matt, for having me on. It was really
Yeah,
great to meet you finally. And Andrew, thanks for getting me this this platform for an hour. It's been great to meet Matt and to talk to you all about this stuff.
It's been a pleasure talking
yeah.
to you.
Yeah, man.
Nice meeting you,
And
Jeff.
Andrew, I'll reach out to you tomorrow and we'll get some more stuff done. No, thank you so much.
All right, have a good night, man.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Isn't he just a delight? He's just a delight, man.
Yeah, no, he was good to talk to you. That was a pleasant addition to the live.
Yeah.
Oh, so do you have any cooking projects on deck or experiments? I know it's
Always.
not fungus season, but usually that's what we do in the winter, right? Experiment.
Always. And I'm working with chanterelles a lot because I still have dried chanterelles. I still have pounds of dried chanterelles.
Yeah, more than you can probably count.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to come out with like if I can do it responsibly, then I want to come out with a natural soda line that like one of them be huckleberry and a mixed berry from like berries that people know less of in Georgia. Like we've got dewberries, beauty berries, service berries. We've got a whole bunch that just nobody ever talks about.
Oh yeah. You ever
And
seen a Tillamook yogurt over there? It's a local dairy here, but they do things like Pacific Northwest huckleberry, and they use the service berry, but they call it huckleberry. But it's a domesticated version, so I guess maybe it is a huckleberry, but it tastes just like those service berries.
yeah, and we're the only thing that's really holding me back on that is the carbonating itself. Like a lot of people want me to go natural with that, which can be done because you can just literally put a certain kind of pine needle that have yeast on them naturally in it, and it'll carbonate it.
I saw that. I wonder how that would affect flavor.
That's what I'm worried about. But one of my other friends was like, you could just get one of those carbonation machines and like mix the syrup into water and carbonate it like you would a regular soda. And I was like, but if I try to scale up, like I'm gonna be sitting there, oh, it feels one bottle at a time. Okay, I made it 2 hours. Like
Yeah, I think you just do it. You could do it like the others, but I think you're probably trying to avoid using things like high fructose corn syrup and
yeah,
concentrated sweeteners, which is what you have to do when you use soda water. But, I mean, you could probably look at how they make those seltzers. Maybe that's a different process. Maybe that's why it's got its own name, the seltzer water.
yeah, and I'm looking at different options. Like I said, still playing with it, and I'll drink it, and I have friends in Atlanta that like I'll mix it up, and then they'll put a little bit of gin in it, or like there's always tests going on. But I'm doing that, and what was the other big thing? I'm always trying to put fungus into desserts. I don't know why. I think it's. Oh, hold on, we got a question. I'm thinking of growing
Yeah.
some medicinals, Maine, cordyceps, and something. Any recommendation? I wouldn't recommend cordyceps if you're just starting with medicinals. Those require a lot more attention. Uh, those undergo senescence fairly quickly, and so it's a lot of maintenance just keeping the genetics of those up. But I would recommend lion's mane. I would recommend reishi, yes, turkey tail. Um, Even shiitake has some antioxidant effects. So there's a lot of different ones you can use. I do recommend lion's mane, turkey tail, reishi, and if you can get your hands on chaga, then chaga. But not everybody wants to mess with chaga because it grows where you live, doesn't it?
I think you can find it. It doesn't grow prevalently. I haven't ever found it. Mainly, our forests have been turned into factories. It's all log. It's all been turned to Doug firs and whatnot. You can go into Eastern Oregon and find some nice areas where you might find it's aspens or birch.
It's birch, yeah. Well,
Birch. Yeah.
it can grow on like 3 or 4 different kinds of wood, but it's just useless unless it grows. It doesn't have any medicinal effects unless it grows on birch.
Did you see the recent video that Rockefeller posted where they actually found chaga growing under the bark prior to it fruiting, and that basically that's never been recorded, never been videotaped, never been photographed, and they actually were able to pull the bark off and videotape it and see the fruiting body of the chaga that you never ever get to see.
That's amazing. That's literally a first time in science. That's wow.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like I just figured it was like all the polypores that it just grew off the edge of a tree, and I saw that video. I'm like, oh wow, that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, and you're always going to find some weird stuff like that sometimes. Like even morels that I know for a fact are not saprobic whatsoever, like species I know for a fact are mycorrhizal. I've seen them growing directly off wood before. And the thing people really need to realize when they're identifying stuff a lot of the time is just because it is fruiting off of something does not necessarily mean that's where its nutrients were derived from.
Right.
So like, if you try to grow a wood lover without any wood, it's not going to fruit as well. But even if you introduce, say you did master's mix and layered coir on top of it, as soon as it hits that master's mix, it's going to start fruiting better. Like if you start fruiting it early, and yeah, man, it's just mycology's crazy.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Well, there's just so much to learn, and especially when you combine it with things like foraging and trying to understand bigger pictures. Like how does this actually grow here? But like that, for instance, a good example is if you've ever grown mushrooms in a bag and you forgot to cut open the bag, and you will see that mycelium will like grow up through the crack, and all of a sudden you'll get pins like, a couple inches away from anything that's feeding it. It's just this mycelial line, but yet there's mushrooms at the top of that, and I've seen that with things growing on wood. But I've also seen the ones that are truly saprobic that are on big logs. Like out here, since I moved out here, I have seen things that I didn't even know existed in Oregon that are growing off of the oak logs. I think I sent you some pictures of those odd little ones. I don't know what they were. Kind of, to me, they look like mycenia, but I don't know anything about anything. That's just a general shape,
If I remember correctly, they were Pluteus cervanus group or complex, not group. People will shish kebab me for saying that.
Well, there's so many out here that, I've shown you 4 or 5 different weird ones.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them that's like, for instance, when I say Pluteus cervanus complex, it's like 5 or 6 different species. And if you lay them out next to each other, it's just like, okay, which one's which? And you're like, oh, fucking no, it's in this group.
Was that the one that's a normal looking mushroom one, or was that the shelf mushroom that I sent you?
That was the one that looked kind of like a meadow mushroom, but it was different color. Like it had pretty much the same morphology as that, but it was like a darker color.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was a whole nother one. Like, there's just so much out here. And the turkey tail, there's quite a bit of turkey tail, and something orange that looks false. I think we saw that too. I might have shown you that one.
You'll get violet tooth polypore as well. The ones that have like little purple on that look like turkey tail. There's so many. A lot of what it is nowadays is just finding the differences. And even my friend that I'm working on doing the difference with, we're sitting here, we're thinking about how to identify them and how to do the work. And then we're like, but does this matter?
Right. Interesting to us, and it's fun, but could we be spending our effort elsewhere?
Yeah. And I do like doing the genome stuff and everything, but it's like what we were talking about, about Amanita jacksoni and the Caesar mushrooms and stuff, right?
Jacksonia I've heard of. What's the Caesar?
Okay, there's an entire section that's called the Caesaria section, and it's Jacksoni, and it's maybe, I want to say, between 6 to 10 other species in this little section, but none of them really have names. So it's like, okay, this one's Jacksoni, and then this one is SP02, and then, you know what I mean? So it's like, yes, those have incredibly, incredibly minute differences. Why does if an average person walked up and went, I need to be hyper specific about this. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Now they're going to be like, no, this is a blank and blank general name because it looks pretty much the same as the other 4 with that, in that family, huh?
Jacksoni, you'll find the only way to truly identify it on the stipe, you'll find, I can't remember the right word for it, but Brandon calls them chevron red, like striations, or like it looks like almost strings on the stipe of red, and that's how you confirm it's a Jacksoni. But all the other ones, it's kind of really small things like is yellow on the edge of the cap. It's right. Stuff like it does not discern whether this is edible or a different species whatsoever. This is literally somebody being antic and going, well, there's 3 spores instead of 4, and they're
right. Like morels. Like,
exactly.
I remember when I first got into ID groups, I just wanted to know, is this a morel? And so I'd put something up for ID, and they'd come back, with the specific species and want more info. I'm like, what? And you start really diving, and holy cow, there's so many varieties, even just in my local area.
Just wait. One of the other upcoming guests that I want to have on, and I should have mentioned this when he was still on because he's friends with him too. My buddy Brandon, if you think I'm good at IDing stuff, this man, I swear, you could go to Antarctica, do an excavation, find a fungus buried like 300 feet under ice, and you pull it out, and he'd be like, oh yeah, that's just like casually, oh yeah, that's that. I've found it like 8 times. Probably. Yeah. Like, I'd say as far as IDing stuff, he's on par with Rockefeller. Like, he's genuinely nice. He's just got other jobs, and other interests. Like, he's a mechanic, and he's the one I told you grows carnivorous plants as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. They're another fascination, but I don't. I have a pretty good green thumb with like gardening, but I just have never really done anything that I didn't gain direct benefit from. Like I didn't eat something from it or turn it into some sort of medicine. Uh, but I bet you can probably do that with a lot of carnivorous plants as well.
Well, just saying that he's given me a pitcher plant, and it survives perfectly in my gourmet grow tent. Like the conditions are
Oh,
perfect.
nice.
It loves.
Likes the moisture, huh?
Yeah, and I happened to notice the one time I got fungus gnats, it was taken care of. Like the
They're like, sure, we'll eat them.
yeah, it was kind of like a pest control built in as well, which I
Yeah, I didn't
really
realize how many different pitcher plants there are. A buddy of mine roped me into being the third wheel for him and his girlfriend to go into a carnivorous plant deal. And they sat there and I'm like, oh, look, there's pitcher plants. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, there's like 20 different types here. Like, what? Like, yeah, they're all,
yeah
like some of them are the same, but they're just a little different color. Like this one is I can't remember what they call it, like a variant or something, and it would have pink spots,
yeah
versus the red or something like that. It's pretty
yeah.
interesting.
There's so many different variations. Before I forget, really quick, I just want to remind our viewers, go check out our Instagram and website, Cave Spring Canopies. We currently have a website. We currently have an Instagram. We're working on other e-commerce solutions as well. So you guys go check that out if you have a chance.
Yeah, got your website up. That's a big step in the right direction towards success, and I'm glad to see that, man.
But I pretty soon here I've got to head out myself.
Yeah, I think we'll tie this up here, and I'm gonna cook some dinner and get to work. And I've been making other videos and been slacking off on
Yeah,
videos, so got all kinds of stuff to do. And we haven't really touched on it because I don't want to go into too many details, but we are going to do a raffle for our buddy Mike O'Madden, who's got into some legal trouble completely unrelated to Micah. Well, not completely, but as far as his legal trouble being, it's not related to Micah stuff. People tried to steal some packages off his porch, and apparently there was some confrontation that occurred, and he was the one that got arrested. So we're just trying to get him legal help. So again, if you check out our Instagrams and our whatnot, you'll see a GoFundMe to try and get him some help and some representation, as we would all hope to have and have a fair shot at justice there. But anyhow, have a wonderful evening, brother, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Michael Allen, appreciate your input there, and Austin and everybody else that was there. B. Hendricks, brother, appreciate you guys coming on and watching. Much love.
have a good one, man.